Greetings everybody, my name is Harrison, or as I go by on my channel, Lockin, and today we're doing a video where we're talking about the coin in Hearthstone versus the lack thereof any sort of counterpart in Gwent. And this is a video that I wanted to do for a really long time, ever since I started the series of Hearthstone versus Gwent, the differences, what they have in common, things like that. And so we're just going to jump right into the video today. The coin in Hearthstone, for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, is a 0 mana card, and it reads, for 1 turn only, gain a mana crystal. And what that means is, in a mana system where you have 1 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana ramping up every single turn to 10, you can play this card to temporarily gain 1 extra mana. And that's actually a really big deal for pretty much every single deck in Hearthstone, to the point that even some decks actually want to go second. Statistics show that there are decks that actively win more when they go second. A perfect example of this deck is Miracle Rogue, a deck all about using spells to cycle through your deck and using cards that work well with combo, a effect where when you play something before another card, this thing happens. The coin is perfect for this deck. Another example is a deck like Handlock, where you want to be life tapping every single turn, and the coin allows you to life tap every single turn and play one other card and still be able to play a Mountain Giant on 4, or it buffs your Twilight Drakes accordingly. And every other deck in Hearthstone can actually make pretty good use of the coin. Decks like Murloc Paladin and Pirate Warrior can use the coin to cheat out their synergy cards and their better synergy cards sooner. They can use it to guarantee buffs on their other cards. They can use it to take away whatever tempo their opponent had from going first and put it into them. And it's one of the best answers to a recurring problem, and it's probably the best answer that any mana system could have to going second. So what about Gwent? What does Gwent need to do? Because Gwent has a problem where going first is terrible, to the point that going first in Gwent is way worse than going second ever would be in Hearthstone, even if the coin wasn't a thing. So we're going to look at what the coin does, what it exists to do, compare what Gwent and Hearthstone have in common about the different problems they have for going first and then second, and then try to analyze what Gwent can use of this information to solve their problem. So first, look at what the coin does. The coin temporarily gives you tempo back for 1 turn only. Your opponent plays a 1-drop, you play a 1-drop, they play a 2-drop, you coin play a 3-drop. Your 3-drop now contests not only their 2-drop, but their 1-drop. And if they choose to just play a 3-drop into your 3-drop, they risk losing to another 3-drop of yours, or other cards that you have in your hand. You've now given yourself tempo and control of the game for 1 turn only, and when it goes back to your opponent's turn, they're now reacting to what you just did with a card of equal value, and you've now nullified the playing field. Statistics show that the earlier the coin is used, the more impactful it is, the more likely you are to be able to win the game, and that makes a lot of sense because in a mana system that ramps, the lower mana is much more impactful, so the sooner you can cheat out the card and level the tempo, the better. So this is really important for pretty much every single deck to be able to nullify the tempo advantage, and it works pretty much seamlessly. It allows you to stabilize the board, allows you to take a stable position against what your opponent's trying to do, and hopefully not get punished too hard. And this is a big deal because when you nullify the tempo, you kind of nullify the advantage of going first. In Gwent and in Hearthstone, that very first turn of the game, whoever's going first has the tempo, and obviously whoever goes second is the one reacting. That's very, very bad in Hearthstone because of the mana system. When you're inherently always playing something second to your opponent, even though it may be equal in cost and value and stats, you will lose the game. In Gwent, it's much different. In Gwent, being able to go second allows you to react. You're always going to be playing 1 card a turn. There is no such thing as mana, so there will always just be 1 card a turn. So going second inherently is good in Gwent, because Gwent is much more a game of reaction and card advantage than Hearthstone, because in Gwent there's no such thing as aggro or trying to abuse an early mana ramp system. You just play a card every single turn. So going second means you get to react to what your opponent does, and now you set the tempo. You can just choose to play cards of value, you can choose to play cards that race your opponent. Dwarves is an example of this. You can play cards that are very controlling. Radovid is an example of this, Scoia'tael. And anyway, going second means you have the tempo. In Hearthstone, going second is bad because the mana system exists and you have no tempo, and going first in Gwent is bad because there is no mana system and you lose the tempo very quickly and you risk losing card advantage. So, what if there was a way in Gwent to nullify the downside of the loss of tempo that comes first, similar to what Hearthstone does, and somehow also gave you a way to sort of neutralize this downside of going first and losing the tempo and just losing the ability to react to your opponent? There are a couple options. We'll start with the simplest one first. The first thing that I thought about was, what if we gave the person that goes first an extra mulligan at the beginning of the game? At the beginning of the game, they mulligan 3 cards, then they get to mulligan 1 extra card. This inherently gives them a better chance at finding the cards they want and gives them a better hand than their opponent. However, their opponent gets to go second, so you have a better hand, but your opponent has the tempo. So you could maybe throw back an extra Crone or a Witcher to make your hand stronger, but your opponent will have the tempo and the ability to abuse his ability to get himself card advantage or to take a winning round. This may not even be enough of an advantage, so you could say you give your opponent an extra mulligan at the end of round, or the beginning of round 1, and an extra mulligan at the beginning of round 2. Then we get into a problem of how much different is that than Francesca's ability, and how much value do we put to being able to mulligan 2 cards. Going first in Gwent is very bad, but it wouldn't take a lot to make it neutral, so maybe 2 mulligans would be enough, or maybe it wouldn't be enough at all. I think definitely, without a doubt, you should know before the mulligan is over whether or not you're going first or second. Besides the fact that there's just no reason it shouldn't, pretty much every other game tells you this information. There's no reason you shouldn't get the information of knowing how your game is going to play out before you decide what cards you want in your hand, because it allows you to make decisions based on the game at a high level. Without it, you're just completely guessing, and there's just no reason that you shouldn't. They should at least be telling you before the mulligan is ever done who's going first and who's going second. Now let's get on to the sort of complicated part of this. In Hearthstone, the coin can be comboed, and the coin can be played as its own thing because it's its own separate card. So what if Gwent had a thing similar to the coin that was its own separate card? And obviously it wouldn't be called the coin because that wouldn't make sense in what Gwent does. But what if Gwent had its own separate card that was the coin? Before you start getting all worried about card advantage and things like that, the card that I'm maybe thinking of would be, you play the coin and then you play another card from your hand, meaning you can abuse the card advantage. So for example, what if the coin said something like boost a unit by 4 and play another card from your hand? So you play the coin, then you maybe play, let's just say you're playing Nilfgaard, then you play your Imperial Brigade, and that's your turn. You've gotten to boost the unit by 4, so you've gotten a little bit of a numbers advantage, and you've now played this. And the way that I think this could work, a lot of the problem that you run into when you go first is, if you ever find yourself down in the point race, you get put into a terrible position where your opponent can either pass, where you are 2 cards down, but you win the round, but you're still most likely 100% going to lose, or you're forced to pass, being a card down, but your opponent's winning the round, which also is almost always a guaranteed loss. So the thing is, what if the coin gave you a slight way to bump your numbers to avoid a scenario where you were forced to pass like this and to force your opponent to play another card, but you couldn't hold on to the coin because when you play it, you have to play another card from your hand? And that could be too strong. Without seeing this in practice, this could very, very easily be too strong. So you could even throw something onto the coin like boost a unit by 4 and play another card from your hand. This card disappears at the end of round 1, forcing your opponent to have to play it. You can't just hold on to it until the end of round 3, hopefully, and just get to play an extra 4 power and try to win that way. Which maybe might not even be a bad thing. If you can somehow win the rounds, despite going first, and then hold on to it till round 3 and boost a unit by 4, that may not even be a bad thing for the game. But it's something to look at, is boost a unit by 4, play another card from your hand. This is something that is really complicated, and I think the problem as a whole is by no means easy to fix. but we know that it's affecting not only the competitive scene, but also every single player's experience in the ladder from the very top all the way down to the very bottom. And it's definitely a problem that should be addressed. And I'm not saying I have the answer, and I'm not saying that the answer is going to be easy, or this even the answers that I've provided. But we can look at what Hearthstone has done right to solve their problems and try to move that over into what Gwent could do to fix its problems. Because as of right now, there's just no downside to going second. So maybe a card should be made that at least enables someone who has to go first. Just food for thought. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.